Hey guys, and welcome back to episode 2 of Last Night a DJ Saved My Life, the podcast. So I hope you enjoyed episode 1 with Bill Brewster and Frank Broughton and all the most incredible knowledge that they gave and that they brought to the episode. And episode 2, we have Colleen Cosmo Murphy. I am so excited for this episode, not only because as a female DJ, it's really interesting to hear another female perspective from someone who's been in industry for 35 years, and she's been DJing since she was 14, and it's just so incredible to hear her story and where she came from and how her musical career developed and how she came to work with David Mancuso of the Loft. She had so many exciting stories to say and so many points to touch on, and I can't wait for you to hear it. So here it is, episode 2 of Last Night DJ Saved My Life, the podcast with Colleen Cosmo Murphy. Enjoy. Welcome back to Last Night a DJ Saved My Life, the podcast. On today's show, I have a guest that's an absolute icon of mine. Someone that has been described as dedicating every inch of her soul and being to the pursuit of music, which feels like an absolute dream for me. Founder of Classic Album Sundays, the world's leading album listening event, and an authority in music, sound, and vinyl renaissance, which is something that we definitely have to get into. She has been part of the movement that changed music forever, and it's a place that I would sell my soul to go back to. That is, of course, David Mancuso's The Loft. Famous for her eclecticism, not sticking to one genre, you can find her on Mixcloud every Tuesday for Boleric Breakfast and Sundays on NTS. Please welcome my guest, Colleen Cosmo Murphy. Hello.
Hello. Thank you. That's a glowing introduction. I almost started tearing up.
Oh, thank you so much for coming in today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We've got so much to talk about. I mean, you've got such a rich musical tapestry I can't wait to get into. So with that, with being in the music scene for since you were a teenager, I guess, from producing music to DJing to curating music, I guess let's start from the beginning. How did you start getting into music?
Wow, how did I start getting into music? I mean, it was all around me on the radio growing up outside of Boston in the suburbs. And we had great radio in Boston because we had so many universities.
Right.
It has the most colleges and universities out of any other city in the United States.
Wow, okay.
And of course, college radio was really big when I was growing up, but also the radio stations were really good. So I was able to access different kinds of music than other people who were growing up around other cities throughout the United States. I also had a lot of teenage aunts and uncles. My dad was young when he had me, and he was the eldest of 6, proper Irish Catholic family. And so I would raid their record collections as well, whether I found Kate Bush or Pink Floyd. Started making mixed cassettes about 12 years old. And then when
Didn't we all?
Yes, exactly. But these were just pause on the pause button. Because I didn't have 2 turntables at that time, obviously.
Right.
And then when I was 14 years old, I started as a DJ on our 10-watt high school radio station, WHHB.
Wow, okay.
And that was kind of the beginning of my journey in terms of playing music and selecting it in public.
And I guess, so you always knew you wanted to get into music, because I think sometimes it's either there in your soul or maybe it comes a little later, but it sounds like you've always kind of wanted to be part of it.
Well, I never studied music. I mean,
Right.
I took organ lessons when I was young. I was a singer when I was young as well. And it was the radio station and being obsessed with the radio that really led me there. And when I went to university in New York in 1986, the way I chose the university was who had the best college radio station.
Right. Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, it was really
Okay.
interesting. But I studied other things too. I studied comparative religions in school. I also was accepted to a master's program for anthropology.
Right.
But as I was always working in radio, that's just kind of where I would focus my energy. So it's sort of it wasn't necessarily intentional, but I just couldn't stop.
Yeah. I think that's the thing, isn't it? Once you focus your energy on something, it just kind of starts pushing you in that direction. With that 54th anniversary of the Loft that just happened last month, I wanted to go over and talk, just tell the listeners about what you mentioned recently about the different things that Mancuso taught you about music, if you will.
Yeah, he taught me so many things. I mean, first of all, he taught me about sound and audiophile sound and getting the best playback you possibly can. I studied sound and radio also at NYU, and it was mainly recording, editing on tape, mic techniques, and things like that. It wasn't about playback.
Right.
So David really taught me about that, you know, how to set up an audiophile sound system, but also how to use it.
Okay.
Which is very different because there's only certain records you can play on an audiophile system because it doesn't lie.
Right.
So that's very difficult. He also taught me about the importance of community. You know, the Loft is a worldwide community, probably thanks to some of the work that we did together with the compilations and getting David's name out there back in 1999, because not many people knew who he was at the time.
Right, yeah. And I guess social media and things, that wasn't about, it was just word of mouth, really.
Yeah, but there's no social media.
Yeah, exactly.
And the internet had really just come into play a few years earlier.
Right.
So the importance of community is something that's really is at the heart for me, and I have definitely built a community with Classic Album Sundays and Boleric Breakfast. Also, just the whole life energy of music, that idea that music is a healing force. There was a book that he gave out to many friends called The Life Energy of Music by John Diamond. And it's all about choosing music that uplifts people. And, you know, I like all different kinds of music, and I listen to different music in different places and at different points of my life and in different parts of the day and on different days.
Yeah.
But when you're out in a club, you don't want to depress people.
Yes,
you know, it's about uplifting.
Yeah.
So I do choose music in my party sets more in that way. But also it's just about being a good human being, you know, and really trying to take the higher ground even when you're faced with some massive challenges. And that has been one of the things that I've really set out to do, following David's footsteps in that as well.
Right. And in terms of the challenges, is that something that was the pandemic, do you think?
Pandemic, and also, you know, there's also still sexism in our industry that's really rife, and something that's affected me greatly as well. And lots of different challenges. I mean, it's a hard business, DJing. Yeah. It's very competitive, kind of backstabby, but it can be the best one as well.
Absolutely.
You know, there's advantages and disadvantages to everything. I mean, someone watching this might say, oh, she's going to complain about being a DJ and playing music and traveling the world, and I'm not. I love it. I love what I do. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it.
But you've always got to take the good with the bad, isn't there? There's always a balance. But we'll definitely get into that in a bit. But I do want to talk about Balearic Breakfast. And, you know, you mentioned community, and you have such an incredible community there. You know, watching you dancing, listening. I mean, thank you for accompanying all my packing I had to do last night. It was great. So yeah, how did that start? Was that something because I think I read somewhere something that you started in pandemic. Was it something before that as well? No,
it wasn't before. Basically, I was a broadcaster on Worldwide FM right after Giles Peterson started the station. He asked me to join up and become one of the DJs, and I hosted monthly Cosmodelica shows and monthly Classic Album Sundays documentaries. When the pandemic happened, I believe only Giles and I had the ability to broadcast live from home. And I'm a broadcaster, and broadcasting live is so different than broadcasting as a pre-record.
Absolutely.
You know, I could just never get in the spirit. I don't mind there being mistakes when it's live. When it's pre-recorded, it always feels a little bit staged.
Yep.
And I just can't get the feeling.
Yeah.
I like being on the edge. I think it really is really a good thing for me. I learned to mix, you know, DJing on the radio. I've just learned my chops in front of people, really.
It's a different energy, isn't it?
It's a completely different energy.
Yeah.
It's really great. So you're feeling something coming back, even though you can't see it.
Yeah.
But I could kind of see it in a sense because we were streaming live, and I was using Mixcloud Live, Twitch TV, and people could comment in live time. In any case, I had a show that I called Summer Staycation in the summer of 2020 because Giles decided to take maybe a month off or 2 months off, the whole summer off, I think. So I covered one of his shifts, and it was called Summer Staycation because I wasn't going anywhere, and I didn't think any of my listeners were going anywhere.
I don't think the rest of the world were either,
Exactly. And then when he came back in September, he said, well, there's a lot of pickup on your show. Why don't you keep the slot?
Great.
But this is September. How can I call it Summer Staycation anymore? And it was kind of a Balearic-y vibe show in that it was very eclectic, and it felt like the music had a quality of taking you out of your taking you to a different kind of world. We were all trapped in our homes, and there's something transcendental about the music. So I put the word out to the community, suggest some radio show titles, and a friend who is also a member of the community came back and said, "How about Balearic Breakfast?"
That's perfect.
And that's how it happened. And then after Worldwide stopped or went on pause, or stopped as a full-time radio station, I decided to keep the show going and just do it on my Mixcloud Live and Twitch TV. And it, still gets like #1 on the Balearic charts and new disco charts.
Yeah, you have thousands of listens.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like a radio show without a radio station.
But I think that's the way to go, isn't it? These days, doing it yourself. And didn't you have a sellout compilation of it last year?
Yeah, we're just doing the 3rd volume right now.
Amazing.
I just approved the artwork yesterday.
Great.
It's coming out in May. I believe it's the first week of May 3rd.
Okay, great.
And then I'll be doing some album release parties around in the UK and Ibiza. And
that's perfect. Yeah, that aligns nicely.
Yeah, and it's turned into a whole, I hate to use the word brand because I feel it's more of a community. So.
Right, okay, yeah. Well, I guess that's a bit like Classic Album Sundays, I guess, what would you say the difference is? Because Classic Album Sundays is a listening party. It's quite similar to, I guess, what they do in Japan with the listening parties.
Well, I never even knew about those. I lived in Japan in 1989. I was a radio DJ there when I was 21. And I've been back and forth, as a DJ from the mid-90s.
Okay.
But no one had ever brought me to a jazz kisa before. So I didn't even know about that idea. It really kind of sprang out of getting to know more about hi-fi and having hi-fi in my house and listening to records in full and thinking, oh my gosh, this is so different. But also all of the journalism I've done in the past, all of the radio interviews I've done in the past. I've interviewed hundreds of bands. I've written about music. I've done a lot of different things in music beyond DJing. Mm-hmm. And it kind of brought all these different experiences together. So I started that in 2010. And I also wanted to address how we listen to music quality as well, both on playback and the format, which is why I was championing vinyl, and this was before the vinyl renaissance.
Yeah.
And also listening to albums in full, uninterrupted, and immersing yourself into the music, but also the story. And it was great. I had no idea it would take off in the way it did, because 3 months in, BBC came along. They put me on BBC Breakfast. Right. And there were no listening bars in the UK.
No, yeah.
There wasn't a vinyl
I think there's
renaissance.
Probably minimal now anyway. I know they're popping up, but it's still quite minimal, yeah.
Exactly, and it just inspired a lot of other people to do something similar. And because it just really hit a nerve in many different ways, whether it was vinyl culture, album listening, or audiophile playback, or just how we listen.
Yeah.
Because the whole sense of hearing is so important, and it's just as important as your sense of sight, if not more. Because we can listen 360 degrees, and we listen unconsciously. Yeah. We don't filter out the sounds unless you put earplugs in. Yeah. But with our vision, we have to turn our gaze, and we have to fix on it. And then we can shut it off and close our eyes. Yeah. We can't close our ears. So it's really important.
Yeah, and I think maybe that also because, we can... with digital, we don't take the time. Like, people don't really listen to full albums anymore. So for doing something like that really brings people back into listening to more than just what's the song that's been chosen for radio play or for streaming play. Absolutely.
And you have to think of the album as a complete artistic statement, even if it's not a concept album. Yeah. It's a representation of where the artist is at that point in their musical journey. Yeah. And you don't even have to like all the songs, but I would say if there's an artist that you really like, just listen to one of their albums all the way through. You don't have to again, but I think you'll be surprised because so many times there's tracks on the album that you like better than the single.
Absolutely, but isn't it so weird how that's what you would do, and now we just kind of don't. We don't. It's definitely something. Listening to a whole album is something special now, whereas it was something we just would do.
Right, and it's also nice to take time out and just listen and not do anything else. Turn the phone off, close your eyes. It's really relaxing. It lowers your blood pressure. Yes. And it's just really good for your mind and your heart and your body.
Yeah, it's almost a form of meditation.
Exactly. I call it audio yoga.
Oh, I love that. That's great. That's another thing you probably have to start doing now.
Well, I have a series called Audio Yoga on my Mixcloud, and there's a bunch of just like 1 hour mixes that are more kind of spiritual jazz and things like that. Nice. Just music that people have done yoga to. So.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. So I believe you can find inspiration in any genre of music, and don't necessarily have to stick to one, and just like yourself, play quite eclectically. Have you ever felt the pressure to be put in a box and maybe stick to one genre?
100%.
Right.
When my career started taking off in Europe, after I moved over in about 2000, this is when dance music was really at a peak.
Right.
And I remember at one point, a few years after I switched agents, she was a brilliant agent in terms of business, excellent, and she's the agent and manages some of the top talent, DJ talent, and I was her first woman DJ, I believe.
Right.
And she said, make me a mix that I can send out to promoters. And I made a mix that I thought was kind of as punchy and, I thought a bit more energetic than the way I would always play. I can play a lot of different ways. And she turned around and said, don't you want to make money? When she got it. And I realized I just can't be pigeonholed. And sometimes I do feel like that has been to the detriment of my career, because I do feel it is easier to rise through the ranks when you have a definable sound and look and everything is gelling together. And I understand that. And it's easier for people to kind of digest. It's easier to promote. You're known for one thing and you do it really well. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I totally admire people that do that. I don't have an issue with that. I'm not saying one way is better than the other.
Yeah.
It's just my musical history is so varied, and I love music, all different kinds of music, and it's been such a huge part of my story. And with Classic Album Sundays, I also get to exhibit that passion as well beyond the dance floor.
Yeah.
I just couldn't do it. I think you have to remain authentic to yourself.
Yeah.
And if that works for you, just, I'm going to do just this style and do it really well, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just you have to know who you are.
Absolutely.
And that's not me. And maybe the fact that I'm still around and it's been a slow and steady build, maybe that diversity has actually helped me in the end, but it didn't feel like it 25 years ago.
Right. I think for me, putting yourself into one genre just kind of inhibits any type of play or inspiration from anything else. I remember a long time ago, someone said to me, you can get your inspiration from things that make you feel uncomfortable or sound uncomfortable,
Oh, 100%. Being on the edge and challenging yourself and taking risks is one of the best things you can do in your career. I know David Bowie said something similar, but really getting outside your comfort zone is the only way you're going to grow.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you stay flat. If you don't have challenges, if you don't challenge yourself, you will just remain the same. You'll remain stagnant. So these things are really important.
Yeah, I think so. So I guess being part of movements such as the Loft, it feels like gender wasn't really an issue at the time.
Well...
Oh, right, okay.
Don't make any assumptions.
Right, fine, exactly. So, because I was going to say, as a woman in industry, have you felt that things have been like gatekept from you?
Well, it's a tricky situation. First of all, I want to just say one thing. I have had amazing male mentors, supporters, and in fact, if I didn't have them, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I also have incredible male listeners and people who support me as fans. And most of my experiences, I would say, have been good. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. But yeah, there's been a lot of different obstacles in my way. Some that I've overcome and became the first woman as program director of that radio station, or went to an audition that was only open to men, or I was at a record shop and I ended up not just working behind the till, but on the floor helping people. All sorts of little things when I was younger. But no scene is exempt from sexism.
Absolutely.
And what I have found in my own experience, I have never been sexually assaulted, thankfully. I've been sexually harassed, like I think every single woman has, but not assaulted. So in that way, I'm lucky. Sad to say I'm lucky because I haven't been sexually assaulted, but it's true. But I have been, there's been some blatant sexism, and that stuff is easier to deal with. When you have a bouncer telling you can't enter the club when you're standing there with a box of records because DJ Cosmo is not a woman, that's kind of easy to deal with. You just tell him to, go where, and you go underneath the ropes and you walk in and say, arrest me. You can do that, So those things are easy because it's overt.
Right.
The real problem is unconscious bias.
Right, yeah.
And I suffer from this, and every woman suffers from this to this day. And it's generally hard to accuse somebody of that because they will always say they didn't do it. And this is something that even liberal men do. The double standard of how women are treated unconsciously still exists today. So for instance, if I am assertive about something, I'm aggressive. If a man uses language that's even stronger than me, he's just making a point.
Right.
The boys' club and how they gang up on you, there's certain, overall, as I've said, I've had amazing support, but it's really the ones who maybe look at me and maybe they want what I have, or maybe they want the relationship I had with David. I was told by one person to my face and publicly, everything you've done in your career is down to David Mancuso.
Wow.
They put my entire career onto one man. I was working before I even met him.
Yeah.
No one even knew we were working together in the 90s for the most part.
Well, yeah, and I was going to say, you helped do that.
I helped put him on, get his story out to the world.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of thing that people will say, and that usually comes from a place of insecurity themselves.
Oh, definitely.
Not everybody likes a successful woman. I think successful women have more challenges than successful men. I'll go on and say that. And we also get more backlash online.
Yeah.
It's incredible, the kinds of challenges that we get online because we have the kind of keyboard warriors that are anonymous.
Yeah.
But, it does stem from jealousy and insecurity. And it's really hard because you can't call it out because you can't prove it. And also these guys would never admit it.
Yeah.
But as I said, overall, my experience has been positive, and I'm really thankful for that because I know other women have suffered a lot more than I have. And, like in any career, you have to take the bad with the good.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And things are changing, and there's more highlighting it. And I think the more we talk about unconscious bias and we as a society, challenge the double standards that we face and really look, what I've said to people is, look to where women aren't being mentioned, and that's where you'll find these stories. Yeah. I'll be mentioning people and promoting them, and it may not be reciprocated. And why aren't they mentioning it? You have to question when the women aren't there.
Yeah.
Because we can't go out and say, "Oh, I'm not there because I'm a woman," because then we look bad.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot still to be done, and I think there's a lot of accountability. Some people do need to raise their hands and realize that their past behavior hasn't been fair.
Absolutely. I think we are becoming slightly more aware of it. It doesn't mean that it's not still going on, but I think having the awareness now, even for the men in industry, going because of certain movements, we have to be a bit aware, feels a bit better. But yeah.
And this isn't just men too, I should say as well. There are women who don't support women.
Oh, sadly. Yeah.
And the Equal Rights Amendment was never ratified in America.
Right.
We're still not protected in the Constitution there.
Right.
But and there was a woman who was leading a movement against it. Yeah. And I still encountered, but it's a minority. And I do also feel like maybe that's because of the patriarchy, they act that way as well.
Yes, I think so.
But
and insecurities
insecurities and different things, or they want to impress men, or there's all different reasons that could happen. And I'm sure it's a very difficult thing to deal with. But as I said, I've had mainly positive experiences, and I am so grateful for everyone who has supported me, irrespective of gender. And I think overall I've had a pretty good run in general.
You've got great staying power. What would you say is the staying power? Because you're so authentic and true to yourself?
I think that's one thing. I think sticking to your guns. But I also think diversity. I do a lot of different things. I have Classic Album Sundays, I do remixes, I'm a radio broadcaster, I'm a DJ, and there's a lot to juggle. And, a mother, my daughter's now 19, so I'm a bit of an empty nester now, but, that was difficult.
Yeah.
And I do think, don't put all your eggs into one basket.
Yeah.
And whatever you do to the best of your ability. And just put your head down and focus on the work.
Yeah.
And despite any noise going around you,
absolutely,
focus on the work.
Yeah, don't look at what everyone else is doing, which is very difficult in the age that we live in today. But
it's awful, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I want to get into this vinyl renaissance. Obviously, you were playing records years before this happened, but we are now, I think, in the 16th year of just an increase of vinyl being purchased and listened to. What are your thoughts on that, I guess, versus the digital culture? I know we touched on it earlier a bit.
Yes, I think it has a lot to do with tangibility, because everything is accessible right now at our fingertips, which is great as well. I mean, there's a lot to be said to be able to access almost any recording and to be able to check it out without having to own it or hear it on the radio. Because that was the only way I could hear the songs that I liked before. Go to a friend's house if they owned it, if I owned it, or on the radio. And that was it. You know, in some ways there's something kind of magical about that. But hey, when I want to hear like Arvo Part, when we hear some of his compositions, stream it, you know, and then I can buy the vinyl. So I think part of it is the tangibility. You become the Uber fan if you own the actual physical manifestation of this album.
So true.
And you also support the artist more because they're not getting anything from the streaming services for the most part. So that's one side. I think there's a bit of romanticism to it as well. You know, you have to interact with the vinyl. You have to put it on the turntable and flip it over. Whereas a digital format, you can just walk away and it turns itself off.
Yeah, you're using more of your senses, right?
100%. You have the artwork looks better because it's bigger. You can hold it in your hands, read it. So I think there's a lot of that too. But also the sound. If you have a well-pressed album that's beautifully mixed and mastered and you have a nice sound system, there is a magical quality to listening back to that kind of a format when it's done well. There's a feeling, it's just more musical.
Yeah, because I guess being more musical is using, again, like we said, all the different senses as well.
And it's not a series of ones and zeros.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so as we're coming to the end, just maybe talk about your favourite moment as a DJ. I mean, wow, you must have had so many from radio, from performing at different places. What's maybe one that sticks in your mind today?
There's so many. I can't even, you know, there's so many ones. It's really hard to say, you know, they're so different. So like a festival set, when you have thousands of people dancing in a field is a wonderful thing, or dancing in a tent like we are, or like our Love Dancing tent that we have here. I always love doing sets in our Love Dancing tent because we help put together the sound system.
Right, yeah. And it is really like love, you know, love in us. Yeah.
Exactly. All the Loft parties that I've been part of, that I've been, you know, so fortunate to have musically hosted. Again, it's not a DJ moment, it's a musical hosting moment. There's so many great dance floor moments. There's a place I love in Japan called Precious Hall that I love playing at. They're all so different. I can't say favorite because I don't believe in that. I don't believe there's so many great places that I've played and so much love, both from promoters and people on the dance floor. I almost don't feel it's fair. And I just feel so thankful. And, you know, the whole thing, I'm so grateful, but I am. I'm so grateful that I've had so many different experiences. You know, I've been playing DJing publicly for 35 years. Wow. Pretty much, almost 35 years. So there's a lot there.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. And so what would you give advice-wise to DJs wanting to get into DJing?
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I would say work really hard, put your head down, become as technically efficient as you can. But it starts with the love of music. Yeah. And you really have to have that love of music to convey that spirit and to help channel it so that people feel it. Some people might use music as a way to become famous, and they can be successful in that. That's not what I do. So I would suggest whatever you do it to the best of your ability, and find your tribe. Yeah. Find your tribe of people and work together, and you'll be amazed at what can happen.
Lovely. Yeah, and I think just being true to yourself, like that's what's going to get you everywhere, really.
It really is, and you see the DJs that make it, and I'm not saying that you have to make millions of pounds a year to be a DJ who's made it. If you're able to sustain a career in music, you've made it.
Yeah.
You're lucky.
I love that.
So many people want to have a career in music, and it's a hard graft. They don't see everything that goes on, behind the scenes, but you're still fortunate to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess my final question is today, what brings you joy?
Oh, so many things bring me joy. I mean, outside of music, what brings me joy is my family and friends. I love nature. I love hiking. I love swimming. I love biking. I love reading. I love films. I love radio. There's so many different things, but
you can bring that
the joy
and
of
music
being
together.
Alive, the joy of being alive, and just being thankful for being alive and to have the opportunities I've had, and to, I'm grateful for where I live. I mean, the world is filled with war and all sorts of terrible things happening, and I am privileged, and we are very privileged people.
Yeah.
If you're not experiencing that directly, so I'm thankful for that. So.
Great. Well, we're very thankful for having you on the show today. Thank you so much for coming in. It's been amazing to hear your stories and your history and experiences. So I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. That's it. I think we're done.
You're really good.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode too. So that was so much fun to film, and we actually filmed it on International Women's Day, March the 8th last year. So it had this even more awesome feminine energy to it. So no trolls please, because it's always interesting to hear from the female perspective. And also, of course, even if you're not a woman, the knowledge that she brought and the things she was talking about, your authenticity and staying true to that throughout your career. And I feel like that's something that can be touched on any career, for anything you do in life. As long as you are true to yourself, you're always going to thrive. And that's what I always think anyway. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. And we've got 2 weeks until episode 3, so stay tuned for that one. Yeah, let me know any of your feedback, any of your comments, and also who else you would love to see on the podcast. But for now, thank you so much for listening or watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.